Whig Party, an often forgotten part of American history, was formed in the United States during the early 19th century. A weak successor to the Federalists, the Whigs, as they were known, would solidify the rule of a two-party system in the U.S. and rise in opposition of what many saw as an authoritative president. The Whig Party, having little to do with actual Whigs, emerged in response to President Andrew Jackson's strong executive powers and policies, which many viewed as a threat to individual liberties and states' rights. Inspired by the British Whig Party's principles, American Whigs aimed to protect the power of Congress and champion the supremacy of the legislature over the executive branch. The most influential founder of the Whig Party was Henry Clay, often referred to as the Great Compromiser. He would help create the main tenets of the party, including protective tariffs, a national bank, and internal improvements to infrastructure. Daniel Webster, having no relation to Noah Webster, the creator of the Webster Dictionary, was another influential Whig who would become known for his staunch defense of the Constitution. The Whigs opposed Jackson's expansion of executive authority. This became pronounced in the Bank War. While not a violent altercation, the war would see the debate over the removal of federal deposits from the Second Bank of the United States. This was an ultimately successful attempt to dismantle a national bank by Jackson and his party. The growing debate would strengthen the growth of the Whigs and lead to a true oppositionary force to the Jacksonian Democrats. The party's platform began to center on opposing President Jackson's policies and embracing modernization and industrial development. Whigs supported projects such as internal improvements, infrastructure development, and protective tariffs to promote economic growth. The first election that saw Whigs on the ballot was the 1836 presidential election. The Whigs faced a divided Democratic Party and presented multiple regional candidates. However, the result would be the election of Democrat Martin Van Buren. It wouldn't be until 1840 when the Whig Party celebrated its first major electoral victory, with William Henry Harrison elected as the 9th President of the United States. Harrison's campaign utilized a populist message with symbols such as the log cabin and hard cider. Unfortunately, Harrison's presidency would be short-lived. After a stubborn display of giving a speech during a storm, Harrison would develop pneumonia, which would inevitably be his downfall. Vice President John Tyler succeeded him. However, Tyler's agenda did not align with that of the Whigs. Tyler's veto of Whig-sponsored legislation led to conflicts within the party, and ultimately his expulsion. Despite the internal divisions caused by Tyler's presidency, the Whigs remained the dominant political party. The Whig-controlled Congress implemented policies aligned with their vision, including the creation of a national banking system, tariff revisions, and infrastructure projects. Under the guidance of Henry Clay and Daniel Webster, the Whigs sought to preserve the fragile balance between the North and the South. Clay proposed a solution, the Compromise of 1850. Made to address the contentious issue of slavery and prevent separation of the Union, the compromise called for California to be admitted as a free state, the abolition of the slave trade in Washington, D.C., and amended the Fugitive Slave Act. While temporarily easing tensions, the Compromise of 1850 would further divide the Whig Party. The Whig Party faced increasing challenges due to the intensifying debate over slavery and the growing divide between the North and the South. Whigs from the North generally opposed the expansion of slavery, while Southern Whigs did not. The party also dealt with the issue of territorial expansion brought forth by the end of the Mexican-American War, which saw the acquisition of new territories in the West, leading to questions about the extension of slavery into these regions. The Wilmot Proviso, which proposed prohibiting slavery in the newly acquired territories, highlighted the sectional divide within the Whig Party. The 1852 presidential election would be a turning point for the Whigs. Their candidate, General Winfield Scott, faced an uphill battle against Democrat Franklin Pierce. Pierce would win in a landslide, leading to the Whigs reflecting on their inability to unify under a clear message. Following the Whigs' defeat in 1852, the party's internal divisions and inability to effectively address the issue of slavery became increasingly apparent. The passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act in 1854, which allowed settlers to determine for themselves the status of slavery in their new territories, would further erode the party's base. In the wake of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, anti-slavery Whigs and members of other parties, including Democrats and Free Soilers, began coalescing around a new political movement, the Republican Party. This emerging party absorbed many former Whigs, who found a more unified platform against the expansion of slavery. By the 1856 presidential election, the Whig Party had effectively disintegrated, and many former Whigs joined the ranks of the Republican Party. The Republican candidate, John C. Fremont, faced off against Democrat James Buchanan, ultimately losing the election. However, the Republican Party's strong showing signaled the nail in the coffin for the Whig Party and the beginning of a new era in American politics. Although short-lived, the Whigs give us a glimpse at the rise and fall of a political movement in the United States. It is a lasting example of how a political party shifts and never truly disappears, but is absorbed into larger coalitions. The reflection of this can be seen in the political landscape today and can be a marker for future political movements to come.